10 seconds. All right, let's take a look. Some people said 2 and some people said 3. So 2 is transpiration. 3 is water flow or maybe runoff, whereas 1 is evaporation. So yeah, the answer would be 2. The way that I remember transpiration is it's like precipitation, but through trees. So like treespiration? I don't know. All right, so today we got a lot of vocabulary ahead of us. Horn is our first one. So a horn, it was created when you had a mountain that had a glacier move across it. As the glacier came by on this one side, it scooped away that part. As it came by on this side, it scooped away this part. As it came by on this side, it scooped away that part. So you need at least 3 glaciers to come by to erase away most of the mountain and just really leave that core, that middle behind. But most of them, or many, were formed by 5, 6, 10 different glaciers coming by. And you can get some very narrow peaks left behind. Next up is known as a arête. Arêtes are narrow knife-like ridges separating 2 glacial valleys. So you can see here some people using it as transportation, going from you've got one side here and another side here. So that means a glacier came sweeping down on this side and it came sweeping down on that side, leaving just a ridge between one valley and another. Cirques. Cirques are basically when you have a bunch of mountains all in an area and you have this high valley. Sometimes we refer to these as hanging valleys, where it's a valley that's higher than all the surrounding areas. As snow and ice build up in here, the glaciers kind of just pile up and they have nowhere to go. When they eventually have an exit, they scoop out all the rocks that are loose in here, leaving a giant bowl shape. One property of glacial valleys is that they are U-shaped. As a glacier comes through, it scoops out that U shape. Originally, they might have started off as a V, but no longer. Grooves and striation, just a review from yesterday. We can see the direction that a glacier traveled in. It's going down off the top of the mountain. Fjords. So what is a fjord? Fjords are U-shaped valleys that have been flooded. So yes, and I know there's a J in there. J is silent. These guys, for the most part, were caused when glaciers came through. During the last ice age, sea level was lower because most of the Earth's water, or much of the Earth's water, was trapped in glacial ice. When the ice eventually did melt, it caused ocean levels to go up. So when the ocean level rose again, it backfilled all those valleys. If you take a look here, this is an aerial view. You could see how the water flowed back up all those U-shaped valleys. Next up we have is moraines. Now, moraines are caused by rocks being scraped off the sides of the valley and being transported. So you can see here, this would be a lateral moraine. Here we have another lateral moraine. And you'll notice here's a glacier and here's a glacier. Where these two meet, we end up getting something we call a medial moraine, or a moraine in between the two. Now you can notice this one seems to have a medial moraine also. So that means that this guy might be a glacier, but he might have met up with another glacier back here. So all these different pathways collect together and it just ends up becoming giant piles of rocks that they scooped off the sides, being pushed to the middle as well. Now, at the very end of the glacier, you're going to find two things. You'll find all the lateral moraines meet up, and then you'll also find the end moraine, which we sometimes refer to as a terminal moraine. The very last one we call the terminal one. When the water melts from the glacier, we get something known as an outwash plain, just like with a river. The water washes out and flows away, usually as a braided stream. Now, we know glaciers love to transport material around, again, mixed up, unsorted sediments. A drumlin may be left behind. Now, a drumlin is just really a big round pile of rocks, but you might look at it and say, that doesn't look very round to me. And it's not any longer. So it got dropped off as a big pile of rocks, but then the glacier ran it over. And when the glacier hit it, this part became more flat, more blunt, and this side became more tapered. So you could actually see the direction that the glacier went in. So you can see how it's tapered here and it's flat here. Well, that means the glacier went that way. Same thing here. You could see that the glacier follows the path of this arrow because you have a blunt end and then you've got tapered end. So it's going to be flatter here, pointier here. Flatter up here, pointier here. Flatter here, pointier here. So we know it traveled to the southwest. Next up, we have something called kettle lakes. Kettle lakes are when giant chunks of ice break off a glacier, get buried with sand, sediment, rock, and then eventually melt. So over time, this glacier melted away, and what happened? Well, the chunks of ice that broke off melted as well, leaving holes behind. And then those holes fill with either rainwater or groundwater. Now, the water that you see in there is not water left over from the ice. The ice melted a long time ago and evaporated thousands of years ago. But we still have the hole left behind. So here's a family picture. We've got things like recessional moraines. Moraines as the rocks get dropped off as the glacier pulls away. We get things like the terminal moraine, the last moraine that we're going to find. Sometimes we refer to these recessional moraines as end moraines. Sometimes we refer to the terminal moraines as end moraines, but it's all basically the same thing. It's rocks that are being dropped off from the glacier. We have braided streams. We have kettles, also known as kettle lakes. We have drumlins. We're not going to worry about eskers for this class, but yep. Here we have more drumlins. Here we have our lateral moraines on the sides. And then again, where you have two glaciers that meet, the laterals meet and form a medial moraine. And then here's one that doesn't seem to have any visible lateral moraines. And it doesn't even really seem to have much of an end moraine. But as the glacier comes down, you could see the shape of it. And normally, if it was scraping against rocks, you'd have a large collection of rocks here, but it doesn't appear that. You'd see how a continental ice sheet is quite different. Much, much taller, much larger. All right, so I do want to just quickly jump back to the beginning and review everything because there is a lot of vocabulary for today. Number one, what is a horn? Horn is a pyramid-like peak formed by glacial erosion. Multiple glaciers formed it. Arêtes, two glaciers formed it, one going down each side. Cirques, big bowls scooped out by glaciers high up in the mountains. All glacial valleys are U-shaped. Grooves and striation are evidence of the direction that a glacier went in. Fjords. Fjords are U-shaped valleys that have been flooded. Moraines, piles of rocks collected on the sides or the end of a glacier. Lateral moraine. Lateral moraines are on the sides. End moraine. End moraines at the end. Outwash plain. All the water that comes off a glacier. Braided streams are generally the kind that we're going to find in the outwash plain. Drumlins, piles of rocks ran over by a glacier. They point in the direction that the glacier goes in. Kettle lakes, chunks of ice that broke off the glacier, melted, and left small lakes behind. And that is pretty much it.